So when you think about farming for the future, I think that farming in the desert seems like kind of a key example of that. You mentioned earlier the controlled environment agriculture. Can you explain a little bit more about what that term means and how it kind of fits into that space of maybe a sustainable food system for the future?
Yeah, like obviously the first thing where we are here in the UAE, the biggest challenge or challenges we face are around like arable land. There's not soil here; it's predominantly sand. So there's a lack of arable land. The lack of water resources. There is some bore water and like underground water tables in certain areas, more predominantly in Abu Dhabi, as opposed to the Southern Emirates. But predominantly speaking, all the water in the UAE comes from desalination. So is coming from the ocean and then being desalinated. And then that's distributed to either the farms or to us here at like the houses and so on. So that's obviously a key challenge that we face. It's lucky to rain a handful of days a year here, so that's obviously key. So that's a lot to do with like the hydroponics and conservation of water that we really focus on. And then the biggest challenge, generally speaking, is the temperature. So we see temperatures up to 52 to 54 degrees around that Celsius in the summer. So yeah, and even in the best of conditions, it's like that's really challenging depending on the technology that you have. So really, the traditional agriculture that you would see in this area sort of only runs between October, November through till sort of April, May. So traditionally, farms will grow for 7 months of the year and then they pack up shop and wait until the summer's over. So as a result of that, it's very heavily relied on importation. And recently the government here is investing a lot into food security. So they want to be a food security global leader by 2051. And that's an initiative that they've introduced. And as a result of that, there's a lot more farms sort of coming to the area that are sort of trying to tackle that problem, because we do have a large population and it's growing rapidly as well. So the things that we sort of had at the previous farm is it was a completely indoor operation. So it was 1 hectare footprint and it was 3 stories. So we had about 30,000 square meters of 3 hectares of actual growing area, which we utilized. And then the term vertical farming, it was 3 stories, but then also on each floor we have racking with 6 shelves. So in theory, you basically have 18 layers of growing area. So you're really trying to maximize that footprint of that area to maximize output. So that farm, our target was approximately 3 tons of leafy greens per day. So lettuce, spinach, kale, which is a significant volume from a single farm. And that was 365 days a year, because we utilized like HVACs, air conditioning systems, which managed not just the temperature, but also the humidity within the grow rooms to optimize for the plants. And then we used LED grow lights for the actual photosynthesis of the plants as well. And then the farm that we had was predominantly manual. It wasn't an automated, like the harvesting and everything was manual, because depending on if we wanted to alter the crops in the future, we wanted to keep it pretty fluid in that respect. But we did have an automated dosing system for the nutrient side of things. So that was all a liquid nutrient that we tailor-made to the crops at the specific growth stage. So was very like high in terms of plant health, plant like science, and a lot of research going into exactly the tailored sort of formula that we would use for those particular crops. And while we were there, we did start to play around with introducing new crops, things like microgreens, which has a huge market with like the chefs and restaurants. We'd introduced like edible flowers. So that was an interesting one as well. And we did a test with strawberries. So that was quite an interesting project, and I think something we'll probably see more of in the future, because for us here, like strawberries, we'll predominantly get them from the UK or throughout Europe, and unless it's in the peak season, and even during peak season, the strawberries here are really rubbish because they're harvested early. They have the white caps on the top, and they're not sweet. They taste more like an apple than than a strawberry. So it's a little bit of a sad thing. So that's something a lot of people are trying to tackle, both in greenhouses and in indoor vertical farming as well. But most recently now with the greenhouses, so we have a lot more challenges than in the indoor farm, but we're trying to be as cost effective as possible, which is the key. Because I think for us, we want to be able to bring the product for at least to the majority of people that live within the UAE. So to tackle that, we do use greenhouses. They have fans. We have cooling pads with pumped with the cold water to try and reduce the temperature within the greenhouse themselves. And most recently, we've invested with a company called Second Sky. It's a company originally that started in Saudi Arabia, that developed it in Saudi Arabia, but basically is produced in Spain, and it's a slightly different colored polycarbonate. It looks, instead of the traditional, which is kind of like a yellow color, it's more of a blue. And the key for us from the research we've done with them, and what we will be the first farm, I think, to be utilizing it fully here, is that you can see about an 8 to 10 degree reduction in temperature in the peak of summer. So if it's 50 degrees outside, hopefully we can get it closer to sort of the mid to low 30s inside the greenhouse with all the tricks up our sleeve. So that previously wasn't really achievable with the existing basic polycarbonate. It does have a slightly increased cost than the traditional, but the benefit is it's not actually blocking out any of the PAR. So we're hoping that we still see good yield on the crops. And even in the winter time, one of the challenges here is that while the temperatures are much nicer, there's a lot less daylight. So you can't risk obviously losing any photosynthesis during that time. So we need to sort of maximize year round. We've also used some things. We don't use soil, obviously, in terms of the ground. At Botanica, we're completely soilless operation. Here at the current farm now, TechAgro, what we do is we actually currently we import some. It's like basically a volcanic soil from Jordan, and it lasts us a full 10 years, and it's recyclable. We can wash it and reuse it. And when it's activated, basically we do see a reduced temperature at the roots as well, which is really key, especially on those hot days. And it also helps with the uptake of the nutrients and the water. So we're having to use less water, less nutrients year round, which is really key as well. So we're going to look at introducing some water chillers as well for the summer period in particular. But just trying to do as many little things as we can to sort of get as much out of those crops.